Hello, I'm Soycat and welcome back to a second channel travel vlog. This is going to be called 36 Hours in Canada, and the whole thing was inspired by a crazy cheap transatlantic fare that I found from London, here at Gatwick Airport, to Canada, then a flight within Canada to another airport in Canada, and then a flight from Canada back to Dublin, Ireland. All of that flying cost £42, that's what I paid when the booking, everything included, all taxes, all fees, etc. And that sounds like heresy to a lot of people. That is $55 by the way, at time of speaking, about 54 something, but you know, less than $60 all in for all of that flying sounds like heresy to people in America that are used to paying so much more. How is that humanly possible, you might ask? And let me explain a little bit about that in today's video. So first of all, let me explain that this is London Gatwick Airport, and I'm flying with WestJet today. WestJet, if you don't know, are by international standards they're a budget airline, but by North American standards, a lot of the Canadians I know find it to be their favorite airline, which I find interesting to say the least. But yeah, basically it's carried with a lot of the standard budget stuff, but they've launched a whole bunch of new services from Gatwick Airport recently. So the thing that makes these possible is the fact that they use the 737 MAX. It's a fairly new aircraft from Boeing that is the 737 that makes so many budget airlines around the world possible. Like it's a single aisle, it has less than 200 people on the plane, but they've made these with a much further distance now, allowing them to go all the way, to say Canada or even a few other North American destinations, while using the same very efficient, very small plane. And basically, they figured why not launch a bunch of flights from Gatwick, pretty big travel hub, to a lot of other places around the world. So that's exactly what they decided to do. And yeah, by doing, using these super budget planes, they can make absurdly cheap deals and still potentially recoup some profits. However, I don't think my flight is one of those. I think you can see some absurdly cheap deals like, okay, it's going to be only $199 or, this much for each way. But how exactly does it work out to $55 for a round trip, including that weird thing in the middle then? Let me explain first of all. I decided to move because airport-looking staff were collecting around me, and I did have a bag on the floor, and I was recording myself. It looked just a tiny bit dodgy. Anyway, let me explain how this is even crazier than you think, because, seeing a deal that cheap sounds absurd, but it's actually effectively a minus £33 flight, because every single flight that leaves the UK, or at least that leaves England, there's devolved powers in Scotland, long story on that one, but every single flight that leaves England has to pay a £15 charge, I think it is, for any flight within Europe, and any flight over 2,000 miles, of which this is one of, has to pay a £75 charge per passenger, and that's just for economy. It's higher for business or whatever, but basically they have to pay £75 for every single passenger aboard this flight leaving the UK, which means that, effectively speaking, they charge £42 for a ticket that costs them a minimum of £75. That's before considering literally everything else and all of the other flights too. How is all of that possible? And I really want to explain, but first of all, I want to make sure that I do get through and onto the plane, because there's a part of me that's like, nah, this won't work. So I'll make sure that happens, and let's go there first. So, by the way, in case you're curious, I'm actually doing some testing with a new camera. This is a GoPro, so if everything looks or sounds awful, then we'll blame the camera, and that's why this vlog sucks. So I'm currently in one of these staircases in the inner workings of the airport. In this case, it's near the Emirates Lounge, it seems. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly mention that I made it through security. And one of the things I love about budget airlines like WestJet is the fact that you don't have to interact with a single human at any point from buying the ticket to getting onto the plane. Like, I'm literally, I got a mobile boarding pass, so I got through security, and no one's seen or questioned anything, which is good for this particular case. Again, this seems like I'm doing something dodgy. I'm not. I just want to kind of have it be known that, like, the less people that think about this, the better it is for me. I mean, the less people that think about me in general is probably the happier I'll be, which is probably counterintuitive to make YouTube videos, but let's not question that for now.
So the obvious question that's going to come up when you have a flight as cheap as this one is, oh, exactly how bad is it then? And honestly, besides the fact that it was a 737, which isn't exactly a premium feeling plane, I don't think it ever will be on any airline, it is worth noting that, it was a pretty pleasant experience. It's a normal seat, like a more modern version of one. You can see it's got like that, the literature goes in the back of it, so all the spaces for yourself. But looking at the legroom, you can see I have a bunch of that too. Like on most planes, you just expect your knees go next to the seat and that's about fine. Well, on this one, I had not only some legroom, but also the best entertainment you can get in the world, which is of course the view from window. And in case that's not good enough for you, there is PowerPoints and there is a USB port too. There is no screens on the back of the seat as you usually get on flights this long. However, there are Wi-Fi connectivity. You can pay for it. It's not too expensive as far as airplane Wi-Fi goes, but obviously on a flight this cheap, I wasn't gonna be doing that. So instead, what you can do for free is check out the in-flight map. So you can basically use your phone as the IFE screen and just watch it from there. I mean, it's better than nothing, but yeah, again, basically it is a budget airline flight between Europe and North America. It's a comfortable budget airline, more comfortable than any other budget airline I've flown, with better service and better free things thrown in like drinks, but it is still a budget plane between Europe and North America. Don't ever expect this is going to be the best thing in the world, which I mean is what you can really expect from most travel, most places these days. Anyway, it was a surprisingly fast flight. I bring my own entertainment and I had a great time on it, I would say.
I really love this little globe up there with the spinning plane around it. It's a nice little touch. Anyway, I'm here in Canada now, and let me just mention something. It's brief, but like Canada is the only country that ever gives me problems every single time I go into it. Like America, Russia, New Zealand, all these different countries, all okay. Every single time I've been to Canada, they've done like a couple extra rounds of interrogation, like, here for a couple of days, got some things you need to see, and then they, you know, like they check my bags a few times. They're like, seems like we'd find some things in here. And I don't know what it is about me. Something about just my trips to Canada apparently alerts suspicions every single time. Maybe it's the fact that like the first time I was alerted, it's like put a permanent mark on me or something. I don't know for sure. But like, you know, hardest country or most difficult country to deal with once you're in there is probably Canada. Anyway, I'm in Nova Scotia Airport now, or in Halifax Airport. It's called like Halifax Stansted, I want to say, which is funny because London has a Stansted too. But anyway, this is Nova Scotia, this is New Scotland, and this is their airport. I like it a lot. Well, actually, let me show you around the airport. It's got a US area right there with a nice US flag. It's got a big globe up there, and then I think that's about it actually. So I don't think you've officially entered Canada until you see a Tim Hortons, by the way, has to be mentioned. Anyway, it's a super nice airport, but I have no idea how to get from here to the city. This is just an audio test to see how well the wind resistance on this microphone handles, or how well this handles in wind. And yeah, there's a bus that I missed because you need exact change for it apparently, and I wasn't willing to below $10 for a $3 bus. So I spent most of hour 1 in Canada getting off the plane and then being interrogated a few times by Canadian officials, as is custom for entering Canada, for me at least it seems. And hour 2 is going to be spent looking around the airport because I went to the bus, and as it turns out they don't do change. I have a $10 bill, it's like a $3 fare. It was going to be a whole thing. Am I going to waste 1/5 of the price of the flight ticket on a bus? No. So I'm going to wait around for the next one, which is an hour. I've got some change now from guess what? I just mentioned it, but look, we got Tim Hortons, and I'm going to explore an airport for hour 2, and let's hope it's a good airport because, again, it's a 1 hour bus, so that's going to be a thing, I guess. So one of the things I found at the airport that's quite cool is this. It's a bookcase, or it looks like a book vending machine, but it's actually a library like branch at the airport, so you scan your library card, you get a book for the flight. Cool concept in my opinion. Anyway, there's also a Tim Hortons, and that's about it as far as interesting things at the airport go. Kind of just, you know, killing an hour here until the thing, but it's worth it, spending an hour to save $7 probably. So I'm going to test how this records in... So I'm going to test how the audio quality is in crazy windy situations like I am right now. It's cold in Canada, by the way, who would have figured? And just quickly mention that one of the few things that makes it always worth it to come back to Canada is the fact that I think I have a crush on pretty much every single Canadian person. So if you're Canadian and watching this is your self-esteem boost for the day. But no, for real, I think I've worked it out. Like, Americans love British accents and people, etc. You know, Canadians seem to begrudgingly love Americans, and British people all seem to love, like all of my friends seem to love Canadians too. There's just something about the Canadian niceness, mixed with the kind of funny accents, mixed with all that sort of stuff, that just makes me kind of love Canadians and Canada. Like, it's just so lovely. And yeah, if you're Canadian, self-esteem boost for the day. If you're not, then I guess that's kind of weird to say, but it's the truth. So I got off the wrong bus and I might be in the wrong city, but something cute I spotted is look at these little crossings. They're rainbow crossings. I don't know if that's maybe to say kids are going to cross there and don't run them over, or what that is, but I think it's cute regardless. Anyway, so over across the river, or I don't know what that is, there's quite a lot of water, is the place I need to be, and I guess I'm going to find a way to cross the water. There is meant to be a regular ferry service, so I want to try and get myself aboard that, or maybe find a bus that will get me to the other side of the river. Again, pretty amateur mistake to end up in the wrong city, but it's close enough that it basically counts as right. Okay, so it's hour 3 and I'm on the ferry, and the crazy thing is, not only did I happen to be right next to the ferry terminal, but the bus ticket, the same $3.50 bus ticket, gives me free entry to the ferry terminal apparently. I can't believe that not, you know, for literally £2 I think it is in British pounds, I got not only a bus ticket from the airport to the city, but also a ferry journey across this, and I want to show you some of the ferry journey. Fisheye lens doesn't really work when it's things are that far away anyway. It's hour 4 and I've gone to the hotel, I've checked in, dropped off my bag, all that stuff, and I'm ready to go. However, I should quickly mention, one, the hotel. I figured, you know, given that this is a cheap trip, it was just a super cheap flight I figured I'd get on, which we'll talk about, but I figured we should probably do a cheap hotel too. I looked though on hotels.com, which is the site I use for all this stuff, just to keep things simple, you know, link in the description as always, but I figured I'd use hotels.com and look for cheap hotels in the area, but they all seem to be pretty far out and not that great, so I figured rather than getting an expensive cheap hotel, I'd get a cheap expensive hotel. This one was about $60 £64, but again, you always get 10% back on hotels bookings indirectly. So it was, something like, 60-ish, 59, something like that, which means that overall it was still less than 100 for 36 hours in Canada, so I'm on board with that. But let's talk about the main part of what made this possible, because you might be curious about what it's like to go on a budget airline transatlantic on a, what sometimes is scheduled to be a 7-hour flight. In my case, it was 5 hours and 55 minutes, but you might be curious, like, oh, was that awful then? It must have been terrible. But no, honestly, like, WestJet is one of my favorite budget airlines. They're super nice. I can see why my Canadian, friends, the people I know, prefer them. They're super, like A++ as far as service goes. It was nicer than most 737s too, a little bit more legroom or whatever, in case that's your thing. And just in general, it was like, honestly, if there's any saving to flying the 737 and flying a budget airline versus flying a major airline with a wide-body, it probably is worth it. Like, if it was only $50 to save, sure, you should probably still do it. A lot of people think it's a huge jump to go down to budget, but I mean, honestly, it was nice, it was wonderful, and it was one of the more pleasant flights I've had, especially given it was a 737 flight that felt that was that long, because it just kind of went past, in my opinion. So yeah, good flight all in all, but let's talk about how I did it then, because a lot of people are going to be asking the question just all over the place, like, okay, so how did you do a flight, like across the Atlantic and then across back and all that sort of stuff for only, £42? How did it cost only £42, or again, $54, something like that, to fly transatlantic twice plus the flight within Canada? And the simple answer to that question is, although budget airlines can get flights super cheap, this is an abnormally low fare because I believe it was a mistake fare. So mistake fares is something that are buzzed all over the internet because people want to tell you there's a mistake fare when there isn't. But the basic concept is that an airline makes a mistake. Sometimes it's something as simple as like the person manually typing the numbers is like, oh, this should cost $420. Oh, it's $42 now. But in this case, I think it was something more complex because you got to bear in mind that the actual fare itself was less than all of the taxes that were involved. So I believe what happened, for some very specific reason on these very specific flights, I can't tell you why or how, although I can tell you how to maybe spot them in the future, but basically for these very specific flights, it just so happened that the taxes, all of those components were removed, and the fare, the thing on top of these surcharges and such, was all they charged me. So that's why they lost money on me going to Canada and back. And most airlines, when they do a mistake fare, they have pretty good grounds to cancel it. There was a big media storm when British Airways did this with a Tel Aviv flight, but basically most airlines will just cancel it, and as long as it's very clear to you, the consumer, that it is a mistake fare, you don't have much legal ground when they cancel your ticket. However, in this case, WestJet, again, to add to their nice kind of service, they just decided, like, why not honor it? I'm sure there was a few other people on that flight that were in the exact same boat of just like, is this really so cheap? And yeah, I thought that was pretty cool off them, and also a pretty cool thing in general. In this case, if I had to guess exactly what the issue was, because bear in mind that when I land in Nova Scotia, my next flight is within 24 hours, and then the next flight after that is within 24 hours. Effectively, these are two stopovers. I'm going to Canada, and these are the longest two flights, but I'm just having two stopovers on my way to Ireland. This is effectively a London to Ireland ticket, and for some reason, they must have a thing that removes all of the taxes or fares, or maybe lowers them for flights from London to Ireland within the EU. Maybe that's something they're planning. Maybe their system isn't designed by them and it just kind of works out start to end. But yeah, long story short, there was a big mistake that led to the flight being this cheap. How do you find mistake fares like this one? So besides, following, any form of blog and hoping that they'll tell you about mistake fares, it does happen once every like 3 months where there's a huge one that does get honored. Honestly, play around with the systems a lot. This is something that I've been, kind of, I guess, working on in the, the big guide to traveling for cheap. But one of the things, traveling for cheap is a hard phrase to say for me, apparently. But yeah, it's one of the things that I really think you should do more of. It's what I've been doing for a lot of these trips to make them cheaper. Surprisingly, because the airline systems are so complex, even airline employees can't properly work them out. I've tried this over the phone and they've gone confused. If you just try mixing up flights, so like, instead of doing, a return, do 2 one-ways. If instead of doing a return, do 3 runways with a weird stop in between, sometimes, it makes the price go up 5 times, sometimes it brings the price down by a few $100s, and sometimes you're going to find a mistake in the system that allows you to travel for $42 or $54 or whatever it is. Effectively, what is that? $17 per flight, $18 per flight, despite being over 5 hours. Yeah, for a total of almost over 10 hours of flying, it's less than $5 an hour flying across, like the Atlantic Ocean. It's huge, it's crazy, and stuff like this can come up. So again, play around with Google Flights or Skyscanner or whatever system you use, but also it's something that I really think you should work on, and that I'm trying to like find all of the little funny loopholes for this, and that'll be in the guide, which I've been working on for quite some time. So if you care about the guide, then still being worked on, don't worry. I do want to put that all the, you know, fun, cheap travel advice in one place. But if you don't care about the guide, then let's go see some more of Halifax. Because, like I said, it's just turned hour 4 as I start recording this. And there's a Canadian, it's called like the Canadian Pier 9 Museum. Most people don't care about museums, I think like 90% or something. But I think it's an interesting one because it fits into something I've been struggling with about Canada for quite some time in terms of like its geopolitical place in the world. So again, I want to learn about the Canadian perspective on the Canadian issue in my head. So let's go and learn about that and then come back and pretend it didn't happen. Okay, so in my stop sign around the world video, I mentioned that in Canada they had these stop erase signs. If you don't know, that's stop, and then that's a French word for stop underneath it. And a lot of people said, no, this isn't the case, this is some weird nationalist thing, it's only used in the French areas of Canada. But here I am in Halifax, one of the most English-speaking parts of Canada. Only 3% of the country speaks French, but there it is, it says stop, and then it's array. It's a real thing, you can see it. And the reason this is silly, by the way, is because that's stop in English, and then another, then it's stop in French. But a French word for stop that is acceptable is stop. By the way, people walk past all around me. I'm yelling at a stop sign. I didn't realize they're around. Now I look silly, don't I? Hour 5, by the way. Well, a fun fact about Nova Scotia is that it's actually Latin for New Scotland. There's a fun fact for you. And another fun fact about Nova Scotia is that they're one of the very few countries, or I guess regions around the world, because they're, a province in Canada, but they're one of the very few places around the world where the only way to sell or buy alcohol is for a government store. So there's something called the NSLC, and I thought this was a fun fact by itself. I'd love to talk about government-owned monopolies on liquor one day, and again, here's an NSLC store. I don't know if you can see it, because again, I can't see my camera, but, it's interesting, like, the whole idea of government monopolies on certain things, in a good way, is something I find fascinating. But then, just before I went here, cannabis became legalized in Canada, and there's something called NSLC cannabis. So you can see it's being advertised in the store right there, and it's like, NSLC cannabis, go down the street. So yeah, the same people who have the monopoly on I guess alcohol. So this is the port, and it's a big alcohol shop. It's a nice one too. Also have a monopoly on, as it turns out, cannabis. And I don't know why, but like having a monopoly on alcohol, I feel like there's some benefits to that. Something feels a bit weird about them having the whole monopoly on cannabis. But something does feel weird about the idea of a government having a monopoly on cannabis and even having stores that look like this. So again, the only way you can buy and sell cannabis in Nova Scotia is through one of these, and it just feels a bit odd. This store is pretty surreal. It really is like an Apple store but filled with weed and different... It's a very strange experience. This store is a pretty surreal experience, honestly. Like, it feels a bit like an Apple store in terms of the technology everywhere, but it's filled with weed instead. Okay, so it's now hour 7 in Canada, and I just did my McDonald's review for the third channel thing. Don't ask me why I have a third channel where I'm reviewing every country's McDonald's. That's just a whole separate story. Also, I appreciate the sequencing probably looks bad that I was just in the cannabis store, and now suddenly, I ate a lot of McDonald's, but again, let's just not question that. Honestly, let me actually go through my honest thoughts here. Even though cannabis is legal here, and that's great, just because something's legal, it doesn't mean everyone should do it all the time, and I think cannabis is a great example of, like, it should be legal. I 100% am on board with that, but I do think there are definite downsides, especially for certain personality types, so on and so forth, and given I'm here for a day, it's not worth diving into. Again, I've done it before, there's many issues that come from it or whatever, and today, we're not dealing with those because it's a vlog, not a drug... Actually, a drug vlog would be interesting. Maybe I should have done drugs. Anyway, that said, it's hour 7 now, and I'm going to be meeting a subscriber, actually. So, one of my favorite things about, the Two Cat channel, the thing you're watching this on, is the fact that whenever I'm going to a country, I'll sometimes, just point out, like, oh, I'm here this amount of time, and then some subscribers are like, oh, hey, I'd love to either show you around this area, or tell you about a thing, or, meet you for a drink, or whatever it is, and I found a lot of interesting stories this way, from Singapore, New Zealand, and I just think it's cool to meet subscribers. So, hopefully this goes the same way. If it doesn't, then I guess we'll cut this from the vlog, or the person who I'm meeting, feel awkward, because if this is your fault, I guess. So yeah, let's see how it goes, and I'll get back to you with the results in hour 8 or 9. I don't even know at this point. Oh, also, wait, no, one more thing, actually. Because I went into McDonald's, so it's kind of related to the earlier story. I went into McDonald's, and I tried to pull out a card to pay, and I accidentally pulled out one of... Oh, I don't actually have it on me, but I accidentally pulled out my... it's the NSLC card. Oh, well, that's definitely the right card. I accidentally pulled out one of these. And, yeah, it made it very... He thought I was a stoner because of the amount I ordered, and, it's terrible. This is why weed shouldn't be legal. Anyway, I'm gonna go meet the subscriber at a pub nearby here. He was like, oh, this is a really historic pub you should see. It's right next to my hotel. It's a dream. Okay, so this is a historic pub near the house. I've met a subscriber here, his name is James, and just to prove he's a real person with thoughts and feelings and apparently abilities, he can say every US president just by the number that they have. So if I say US president number 40...
Ronald Reagan.
And I can be like number 32?
32 would be Roosevelt. There you go, sorry. You know, a little in.
US president number 2?
That's easy, Adams.
Do you know the UK Prime Minister from 1992?
That would be Thatcher, right?
It's 2 Prime Ministers. Hey,
Thatcher and Major.
See that?
I didn't know when the transfer was, but...
Anyway, geography talk, learn some things about Canada. Okay, so it's hour 10 now. I have not left the pub just yet. I'm about to leave the pub, but I learned a decent amount about Canada, I'd like to believe. Anyway, there's a big monument to the Crimean War.
Only one in North America.
For some reason in Nova Scotia, and I'm going to be shown that now, or be murdered. So this is either the end of the travel vlog, or I'm going to see the only Crimean War memorial in North America. That's an interesting one, so let's go. Okay, it's hour 11 now, and we have made it to the only monument to Crimea in North America. There was 2 people, literally 2, Welsford and Parker, I believe. They died in the Crimean War, and they get this whole giant statue of a lion dedicated to them. Also, because it's history of Toycat now, across the street, look, there's the Lieutenant Governor's house. He is the guy who I believe is like the Queen's representative for Nova Scotia. For some reason, the Queen sends representative for each of the Canadian provinces, and that's the one from over here. Isn't that great? Look at that. Okay, history of Toycat over. Let's go back to sleep now. Okay, so it's hour 12 now, and one of the things I had to do before I went to sleep after the night of a few drinks is try doner. So, in most countries, especially Western Europe, there's a thing called doner, right? Everyone's familiar with it. You eat a kebab and it tastes like vague meat or something. And over here they have something called doner, which is a very similar thing, but it's made from beef, has yogurt, spices, etc. And I have some doner egg rolls here, and I've never even tried egg rolls. So that's like a double mix-up. And then we've got some doner over here as well. It's going to be kind of exciting in my opinion. Let's do this. So this is a doner. This is the equivalent of what I'm familiar with back home. It's one of the things that like I looked into like what food is famous here, and it just comes up all the time. So this is what a doner looks like. Again, it might look super something to you, but I love the look of this. This is like, oh, that is so... Is greasy a word for it? I don't even know what the correct term is, but I love it.
That's what we'd say.
Yeah, okay, greasy is right.
We use greasy as an adjective for like everything.
Look at that drip. Again, the drip is horrendous to deal with, but it's a sign that it's tasty drip. Like,
you gotta fold.
Fold up, oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I'm a yes. Gotta eat on the wettest side. So.
Oh my god, it's leaking so much. The leak is terrible.
That's why they have the tin foil.
I approve. So my hands are a mess now. My face is a mess. This is all terrible. Eating procedure, 0 out of 10. Food, amazing. That's like...
Yeah.
The sauces, the flavors, they're all over the place. I'm loving it. However, there's something called the doner sauce, or what is that called?
That's called doner sauce, yeah.
The doner sauce.
Doner.
Doner, like doner, but doner. And we're going to be taking some egg rolls and dumping into this, because this sauce is meant to be the business. Some people like the sauce, but everything else is mixed in there, because it's that good at the sauce. This is really what takes this apart from regular doners. But is it good? Let's find out.
It's a little much.
And I'll tell you why next.
With Venus, you're in charge of how your skin feels.
For the record, you got a little much on that one.
Okay, too much.
Okay.
Hold on.
If it tastes a little overpowering, that's why. Here you go. That's more like it. Yeah, right there.
Because no one has an opinion on how you live your life, why you shave, or how you show your skin. My skin.
Why are these called egg rolls? There is no egg involved whatsoever.
No, there isn't.
My name is Elaine Barber.
These are delicious. I just want to eat these, man. Like,
I've never had a doner egg roll. Like, that's serious here. I've had that, and I've had the sub. So.
This
is the ideal form factor, because bear in mind, this keeps happening. There's drip everywhere.
It's not as bad. It's not as bad with subs as the bread catches it normally. So that's why it's recommended the sub.
So there's a lot of food issues, but this is just delightful. This is a really good form factor. You hold it, it's crispy, it's got that like kind of prawn thing.
Yeah.
Donair, recommend if you come to Halifax, the provincial food. Donair, would you say that's
yeah, basically. If poutine's a national food, donair is a provincial food.
Make sure you get some. This is good. Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so it is now hour 20 or something on my 36 hours in Canada. Last night I met a Nova Scotian. We went for some drinks. It was pretty useful. I've slept for the last 8 hours because, of course, you know, that's a thing you've got to do. And this morning I have like a few hours left to go to the airport, and there's 2 things I need to do. There's some video stuff for the main Toy Cat channel, and then there's also, I figured I'd go for a little bit of a walk because there's a place called Point Pleasant Park, a little bit that way, that I kind of wanted to go to anyway. There's a few like interesting points there. It should just, worst case scenario, good views, best case scenario, maybe learn a thing or two or some history or whatever. But interesting enough, the subscriber I met last night, he gave me very explicit advice before I even mentioned that I wanted to go there, of like, oh yeah, don't go there, you know, anytime, you know, too late or too early, because that's where people get murdered. So on last week, got dismembered, and I find that interesting. Like, it's not only going to teach me some history, but maybe I'll get dismembered too. That'd be a great end to the vlog, in my opinion. So on the way to Point Pleasant Park, I found this, I assume it's a shipping yard, but it's the most surreal looking thing with these weird walkways that are just elevated above nothing. I don't know, it looks a bit like a supervillain space, and I think that's kind of cool. There's just a thing on the way to where I'm going. But yeah, hour 11, found a villain space, and or one of the weirdest looking structures I think I found in a while. Not bad for a thing on the way to something. But yeah, this is a shipping port. I guess it used to be a big one. Maybe it still is, who knows for sure. Okay, so this is Point Pleasant Park, or at least the edge of Point Pleasant Park. As you can see, it's a pretty big park, but it's really impossible to take pictures of the notable things like this huge anchor because the sun is just that bright. Like, it's so bright, I look at the sea that the sun is reflecting off, and it's literally burning my eyes. So, you know, besides, I guess, my light sensitivity problems, this is a nice little walk with some nice little historical things. This is dedicated to Canadians who died during peacetime, which, I don't know, seems like a bit of a weird monument. Like, usually it's, I mean, maybe it's a good thing. I'm going to use the very last 3% to try and talk about that murder thing, because of course, looking around here, no one gets murdered here. It's a nice park with some nice views and a nice overall way to start my morning, I think. But yeah, it's funny, there's a lot of places in every, I guess, culture, town, city, etc. that are known for being like, oh, people get murdered there all the time. I looked up the specific thing, like dismembering last week, not a thing. At some point in the 70s, some hikers were dismembered, like, I think they were, like, brutally murdered in a satanic cult. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, rumors start all over cities, and sometimes you don't question your friends, because, I mean, you're not meant to question your friends, but sometimes in the modern age, with enough information, sometimes before sharing information. It's hour 23 in Canada, and just as an interesting little side note here, behind me where I'm about to go, departures, you'll notice how it says domestic and international departures, but then, you know, if you look behind me, there's a separate one for the US. So there's a, you know, usually airports segregate, like, you know, domestic versus international, but here it's domestic, international, and then separately US. And the reason for that, I believe, is because they have a pre-clearance thing here, which is a really weird thing the US does, where you can effectively enter the US while still on Canadian or a few other places, I think Ireland and Abu Dhabi territory. And yeah, fun fact about Halifax Airport, it has one of those facilities, I guess. Anyway, I've got to go on the other side of that and then get some breakfast, because I still haven't eaten yet, because again, body has no clue what's happening right now. And yeah, I'll see you on the other side of security if I make it. So, made it through security, super nice airport in general actually, and just want to quickly point out a couple of things. One is that all over the place there's signs saying, remember not to take cannabis out of the country, because I guess at some point that's going to be a really confusing thing. Second of all is the fact that there's a separate part of the airport just for commuter aircraft, because this is a Dash 8 flight or something like that. It's a, you know, propeller plane, which I think is a kind of cool thing. I'm looking forward to that. Third of all is that I've got some Tim Hortons, because of course I do, it's Canada, I'm in the airport, and I just wanted to mention, like, I don't think this came up on the vlog yet, but the number of Tim Hortons locations, even compared to like a McDonald's in a place like this, is absurd. Like, I'll show you hopefully a map on screen somewhere, or I sound silly, but it's crazy. Anyway, like I said, I'm in a terminal. There's like a special place for just commuter aircraft here, so I'm gonna have to look really strangely while I just eat my food over there. But let's do it.
So this is the plane they use for the short hop from Halifax to St. John's. Again, it's about an hour flight or so. Interesting enough, as you can see, it's a propeller plane, and despite being a propeller plane, and despite, you know, boarding from the ground like this, the flights are still $350. That's why I made the whole video on this, because it's like, man, this experience for this price is pretty crazy. However, interestingly enough, if like me, you're into planes, then you might notice it's a Q400. So yeah, it's one of the newer planes from Bombardier. If you don't know, Bombardier is like a Canadian company that makes planes that were historically only made really tiny planes that didn't compete at all with Airbus and Boeing, and although they still don't really compete, they're starting to like get a foothold into the very small end of the market, or like the medium to small end of the market, and it's you know, it's a big deal, it's a big part of plane, aviation, tariff news, etc., and it's just kind of cool to actually see one in person and actually ride in one. And yeah, even though, fun fact, it's called the Q400 because it's quiet. For the first time, they've started dampening the inside of the planes, but it is not quiet on the inside. I guess it's quiet compared to something that existed before, but this is still louder than any other plane. So if you hear, you're like, oh yeah, there's a Q400, it's a really quiet plane, and like me, you're into planes and you're like, oh, I'm kind of curious about what that's about. No, this is not a quiet plane. However, I like flying new planes, I think it's interesting, and the cool selling point of this, I would say, if you do happen to be on a, you know, a Q400 flight, is you're not gonna get some amazing service, this, that, whatever, because again, it's a Q400 regional flight. However, it's a 2-2 seating arrangement, so you only ever have one person next to you, and if you book two people together, you don't have, there's no such thing as a middle seat. There's aisle, there's window, and there's no in between. And personally, I like that a lot. I think that's the dream situation. I usually go for window seats for reasons like this view you're seeing, which, side note, the view is just amazing over Nova Scotia on the way out, or over Halifax. It really just reminds you, even though we're at the airport, you know, one of the biggest airports in the province, probably the biggest, despite being just here, there's literally nothing around for miles. There's roads, which had to be built out of the forest, but it's so sparsely populated, if you look around, you can just see no one lives here. There's like a house, sometimes a few settlements, but it's mostly just land which hasn't been settled, and it's always a reminder, like, people who think we're literally running out of land on the planet, no, we have plenty of land, it's just in countries without all the people. It's yeah, it's a population distribution issue, not a population total number issue, and if this isn't a good reminder about that, then I don't know what is.
I have arrived in St. John's Airport, Newfoundland, or Newfoundland as you meant to say it, and I keep not saying, and just another quick example is the fact that its airport code is YYT, so here's a stop sign that also says expansion YYT, and you might question, if you've been to Canada, you'd know this. If you haven't been to Canada, fun fact for you, why all Canadian airports have Y at the start of them. For instance, I flew from YHT to YYT to, you know, the most famous airport in Canada is YYZ. What's the deal with that then? Are they just, you know, question naming airports? And the simple explanation of this one is the fact that Canada actually had their own internal way of naming airports before the free letter, I think it's IATA codes, came along, and basically because of that, when they did have to go to free letters, all of the ones that they wanted were actually taken. So long story short, they figured, let's keep the old airport system names that we already had, such as, you know, YT or HT or whatever else, and put a Y in front of them, and that is why almost every Canadian airport starts with a Y, and a lot of the ones even built after the changeover figured like they, you know, they'll keep the Canadian thing going, because having a Y at the start is now Canada's thing. There you go, fun fact. It is hour 24 of the Canada adventure, and I have gone to the top of Signal Hill, which is a really key point for the battle between the British and the French over North America. It's one of the points where the British had control over Newfoundland, good stuff, etc., or bad stuff, depending on your historical perspectives. But yeah, I've you know, gone to the top of that. Kind of an interesting thing, and I like big vantage points, but the reason that I'm currently walking down some steps that you might have noticed, and the reason we're going in a place like this, is because I intend to go super far. I think it's technically a hiking trail. It's about an hour that way, because I want to get to the very easterly point of this island, because I feel like it'd be a good backdrop for a video, which you've either already seen on this channel, or it failed and you won't see on the channel. So I'm gonna go over there and fail to make a video, if you haven't seen it already. Thumbs up. The GoPro wide-angle lens is pretty weird, by the way. Probably shouldn't be recording down such rickety steps too. Look around every other angle. This way. I assume this way is nice. Hello, I'm Slickcat and welcome back to another second channel video. There's some wind right now that I can hear even from here, but I'll see if it interrupts me and I'll look this way a bit more so you can see the view. Maybe if I got up and did a true walk around. It's kind of nice around here, right? I'd say so. I think you can see in the shadow what it looks like. It is hour 25 in Canada. I'm slowly running out of hours, but I finished my video now, which is great. I think it's good, but I don't know because there's a lot of wind noise, like there is right now. I don't know if that's ruining this as well, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of share a moment I had, because I honestly had one of those, like, you know, nature is fucking lit moments. Like right here, you can just hear there's like a nice stream noise. Then over there we can see the view of where we're heading towards, you know, in towards St. John's the city, and it's just super beautiful, man. I'm just like on board with this. One of the things I don't quite understand about nature, but it really does like help my brain think about ideas and such, you know, given that I, you know, need to make ideas on like a daily basis for at least one of the channels. I think it's something sort of like the random shapes and it like gels in your head just the wrong way, but nature really does like recharge the idea part of my brain. And this view right here is just a moment I want to remember, because it's just that nice. I like it. Maybe it's ridiculous to fall in love with a stream and a nice view, but I have. I'm sorry. Okay, it's hour 30. I need to quickly just make him... Okay, it's hour 30. I need to quickly admit I made a mistake and I lost 6 hours in there somewhere because I was miscounting, so just add up all those things, and it's either hour 30 or 31 right now. I finished the trail. Delightful trail, by the way, and I've got to walk uphill through a place called Battery to get back into the city. It's been a really bizarre walk, actually. Like, there are people's houses right on the water, and something about that, as someone who can't swim, is just super scary. But yeah, it's a very scenic walk, as you can see. Got some murals and everything, and here's the best bit. At the end of this entire crazy stilt little thing, there's a stop sign, and you know what? It says stop, but it doesn't say array underneath it. That's the dream right there. Anyway, I'm about to meet a subscriber. His name is Greg. He might murder me, so if there's no hour 32, assume he murdered me. But yeah, I'm meeting a subscriber here too. Should be fun. Okay, it's hour 32, I think, now, and this is Greg. He didn't murder me, or at least he hasn't murdered me yet, but he has shown me the kitty vitty gut. It is a super beautiful little fishing village that has like that view of, and as the sun's setting, it's just like a perfect little view here. So yeah, kitty vitty, I like it. And I'm not dead yet, so 2 thumbs up. Okay, it's hour 32 now, and I am actually in the most easterly point. Is it east?
Easterly point.
Easterly point of Canada, of Newfoundland, and that way is direct to Ireland. I've been here now, and I can, if I wanted to swim, I totally could go that far. It's a swimmable distance, right?
Like, I think you can do it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is I'll see you in a little bit with this video. It is. Okay.
In my Japan trip, I took one of these, and everything I got is these weird fisheye shots. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, sometimes you have to like tone it down a little bit.
Yep, you're going.
So hour 33 or 34 in Canada, and I have cod tongues. This is a Newfoundland thing, and it is literally the bottom of a cod mouth, I've been told, but then battered in something sort of pork. It sounds pretty absurd. Also, we have these little, what they're called, scrunchions. It's just almost pork fat, salt, what is it? Give me
salted pork fat that we fry up in fat.
Salted pork fat fried up in fat. So I'm going to try this first. Pretty good, actually. Gross to think about, tasty to eat, which is most like really gross fruits, really. And then this is the cod tongue. Yep. So I'm going to try it like by itself first, and I'm going to use tartar sauce, I see. Yeah, nice fish sauce. So it actually tastes just like cod, honestly.
Sorry, bud.
Okay, this is the cod tongue. It tastes a lot like just cod, as far as I can tell. I can't necessarily tell that it's the cod's speaking like thing. But let's try some tartar sauce. This is a good snack, like a bar snack, I guess is what it's mostly used as. It is crazy good. Big fan, actually. Like, as far as random weird part of an animal goes, I'm down with it. Also, the fat, super gross. Like, I imagine if I ate too much of this, really gonna be like hurt my mouth after. But as a snack, you're like, oh, I'll eat more of those. I'm just gonna, big fan. So yeah, the St. John / Newfoundland food, can recommend the cod tongue at the very least. Even if it sounds awful and it sounds like I'm eating cod's tongue, it's fine. I'm probably not. Real good. Hour 34, and I have made it to the airport. It was actually a lot of fun. meeting the subscriber, learned some fun facts about Canada, which will hopefully feature in an upcoming Canada video. Anyway, at the airport, just a mild interesting thing. It looks like there's like pixelated dolphins, or I'm not even sure what that is. And yeah, it's an airport which is currently undergoing a lot of renovations, and I guess that's gonna be terrible for me, or maybe okay. It's gonna be terrible. But let's see what's going on here. Oh, more pixel art dolphins. Great. Hour 35 in Canada, second to last one, I guess. I'm at the airport, and I just have a mild complaint because there's advertisement campaigns all over the airport for like, oh, going somewhere, go hungry, flying out, come earlier, etc. But when you get inside the airport, because they have a bunch of places like, oh, there's a Tim Hortons here, there's a this, there's a that. I was even recommended there's a certain restaurant. That restaurant is the only thing here that's actually open. Everything else is like under construction like this. And it's like, well, why do this to me? It's 11 PM, I was going to eat at the airport, but apparently that's not a thing to do. Anyway, like I said, last flight here. Interesting enough, so this is only a 4-hour flight, but it's like a flight from hell if you're looking for, I guess, comfort over anything like that, because it's 11 PM to 7 AM, but 4 of those hours are time difference. So it's a 4-hour flight that wakes you, you land in Europe at 7 AM. So I'm not sure what the official plan is meant to be. Like, again, on my end, it's like, sure, I guess I'd save a night in a hotel and I, spend it on a plane instead. But 4 hours of plane sleep and then you just end in Europe. Again, I'm down with that, but it seems like a questionable thing, but I guess that's not the key thing on this for most people, maybe. I don't know for sure. Going from North America to Europe, by the way, there is not a single way to do it as far as I'm aware that doesn't suck a little bit, and I guess without like paying for some major airline for like business or first, and even that is still not good. And I don't know why we haven't worked out a good way to just do like, oh, how about a morning flight to an evening or something, but we haven't. Anyway, hour 35, just about getting the flight, just waiting for the announcements over there. It's nice to see an airport at night though.
Hour 36, and my time in Canada has come to an end, sadly. So yeah, that is the end of the travel vlog. I just wanted to kind of throw a thing up the end here saying that I honestly really did enjoy it. I think I got value from the ticket, and I would do this again in a heartbeat. You might think to yourself, no, 36 hours in any country is way too short, especially one so far away, but as someone who enjoys flying, as someone who enjoys the travel and seeing brand new things, I think this was totally worth it. Maybe, like for your first time going somewhere, not a great trip, but I got a lot of value, a lot of fun, and honestly, I just enjoyed my time so much. It was one of the most memorable trips I've ever taken. Met a couple of cool subscribers, had a good time in general, and I hope you all enjoyed seeing it as much as I enjoyed doing it. I won't get into the habit of starting vloggings on this channel, I don't think. Like, you might see some videos from places I'm at, and that's a thing we'll see in the future, but for now I just wanted to kind of like show you what it's possible, show you what's happening, and maybe encourages you to do something similar in the future. But for now, I hope you'll enjoy the video, because second channel, don't care. Goodbye.